Hello, my friends. I am here at Devil's Alley, and my friend Brad and I just got back from doing the Mutter's Museum, if that's how you actually say it. How do you say it?
I think it's Mutters or Muters, but it looks like Mutters.
It's the U with the umlaut, and that always gets me. I think it's supposed to sound like an EU. Anyway, they had a food guide inside that little space there, and they recommended this area, and we're going to check this out. And because they do not allow any sort of video or photography at the Mutter Museum, we're going to talk about it here while we enjoy some of this delicious food that we just got. So let's take a moment and talk about the food we got. So I got the chorizo burger, which comes with a grilled piece of pineapple. I'm only looking at it now. It doesn't look like there's only like a little sliver of it. But then there's some bacon on top, so this looks promising, but we're going to find out. And what did you get?
I got the chicken herb sandwich with a side of sweet potato fries. And haven't tasted it yet, but it looks like it's pretty damn good.
We did actually try the sweet potato fries, and those were actually slamming.
Delicious.
All right, so Brad, what kind of museum would you call the Mutter Museum?
I would definitely describe it as a museum of different human physical abnormalities that we don't see every day or that we may not even see anymore these days. When we went there, we definitely saw a lot of things that they dealt with hundreds of years ago.
It was created by the College of Physicians of Philadelphia, and so this is like a very large medical collection. There's a lot of crazy specimens that have different disorders, and this is how they studied them back in the day. I don't know how contemporary any of these things that they have on display are, but there are some exhibits later on that we'll go over that were really cool. But for the most part, like if we go through the map real quick, some of this stuff is just mind-blowing. And you know, there is a lot of gross stuff to see. There was like this whole section about eyes that was really rough to look at.
Skeevy.
They actually had a lot of that stuff on display, and it's wild to think about how far we've come in our thinking and our understanding of the world that we live in, especially when it comes to the transmissions of disease. So, what would you say your favorite part of the museum was?
The whole museum is good, top to bottom. I would have to say that my favorite part, though, was the whole influenza pandemic that happened in Philly back in the early 1900s. To read about it, and just they had this whole screen where it showed when the influenza started and how quickly it spread.
The time lapse.
Yeah. It was insane, and it just showed a map, and basically it panned out on the map, and it showed how much it had spread. And it was saying one of the craziest, the craziest days was in one day over 800 people died from it.
It was 1918, so like right around the time when everybody was packed into cities producing things for World War I and supporting everybody there, despite the fact that they didn't know that the war was about to end. The end of the war was around the corner. So there was a lot more people in the cities trying to find work going into the cities, and they had some sort of parade. I didn't figure out what the purpose of the parade was. I think it was to raise money for the war, so they were selling war bonds, right? Because there was that much close contact with hundreds and thousands of people, it spread really easily, which unfortunately is kind of mirroring a lot of the things that are happening lately, which is we have a virus that's spreading a bunch of people, and it seems like it's very
rapidly.
Yeah, it's such a cautionary tale. Man, there was a bunch of signs about not spitting because the belief was that the virus kind of hung out. I don't think they knew it was a virus, actually.
No.
I think they thought it was a bacteria because bacteria was a relatively new thing. Even pasteurization was a relatively new thing. So like back then, they didn't know how it was transmitted. So there was a lot of really interesting and novel ways that they were believing that it happened. So that resulted in a lot of signs that said no spitting, because they believed if you spat, then the dried up spit could hang in the air and get you infected.
And if you spit, you got arrested.
Right, there were fines. You got fined $2.50 a day, $2.50, which was about the amount that you'd make
In the course of a day back then.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a day's pay.
So I really like that exhibit too.
Yeah.
But that was probably my favorite. But there's one that is my honorable mention. So I'm about halfway through this chorizo burger, and it's actually surprisingly spicy. I enjoy it though. I like it. But I wish it had more pineapple. It could use some sort of sweetness to kind of cut the spiciness and like oiliness of the sausage. But either way, I'm enjoying it. So how's yours going?
It's actually pretty good. There was unexpected prosciutto on it.
Wow, surprise prosciutto?
Yes. Not often that you get to say that. It was actually really good, so I'm enjoying it. The fries are pretty damn good, too, so no complaints on my end.
All right, so my runner-up, and I don't know if it captured your heart like it captured mine.
Pun intended.
But we are going to talk about the Megacolon that is out on display at the Mutter Museum, or Mutter. I'm going to struggle with that this whole video, so just forgive me. The Megacolon. Some poor guy was so... What's the word?
Backed up?
Yeah.
I don't know how else
He
to
was so
say it.
constipated that he had almost 40 pounds of dried up feces all up in him, so much so that it took up most of his torso. He went to a doctor, and they told him he was fine and to go home.
They discharged him.
They just charged him. And now, if you'd like, in the gift shop, there's a plush version available of his colon.
It's beautiful.
It's a cuddly colon.
It is. I would cuddle with that colon any day of the week.
Imagine that one day you die and your colon is one of the most famous colons in America and maybe the world. That is Megacolon.
Yes,
Magical story.
It is a magical story.
Anyway, so there's a couple other pieces in this museum that are worth noting. You were pointing out something about some Siamese twins or conjoined twins. I don't know what distinction is.
Yes. So there's an exhibit in there of Chang and Ang, who are the first widely known specimens, you could say, of Siamese twins from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They were obviously this worldwide phenomenon because nobody had ever seen it before, especially in science. I do remember that they tried to separate them with surgery.
Oh, yeah?
I do, and I believe one of them passed away. I could be wrong with that. It's been so long ago since I learned about them.
We need a fact checker.
We do need a fact checker, so please do not quote me on that. But yes, it was very interesting to see the display of them there.
Yeah, they had a cast of them done, which is
Yes.
wild. The other one that's kind of infamous is the soap lady. There was a woman, I think it was in the late 1800s, that passed away, was in an airtight box, and some anaerobic bacteria, meaning they don't need oxygen, they started breaking down that body, and instead of, I guess, how do we describe this real quick without being too gross?
Tough
Basically,
to do to not be
that
gross.
particular type of bacteria breaks down a body by producing this really weird wax out of the fat. It's some sort of process very similar to soap called saponification, but trying not to use big fancy words, you basically get encased by a wax made out of your own fat. So this soap lady has on all of her clothes underneath this big waxy shell, essentially. And she's right out there on display with us, and it's wild to see. She probably had like the biggest crowd that I can remember from this.
Yeah.
But speaking of crowds, it's a pretty tight little space there that they have. There is so much on every shelf, all these different artifacts, but there's also just no space to walk around. It was, I don't know how you felt about it, but we were trying to employ strategies to try to get around in it.
It got a bit claustrophobic at times.
Yeah.
So we were definitely getting out of areas, not because we weren't interested, but because we couldn't move.
Exactly. But there was at least some space in the corner for us to check out the last thing that I want to bring up, which is the shrunken heads. I had no idea that this was like a actual real thing. Like the shrunken heads is a thing in like South America where they remove the skull and then they use a bunch of different processes to shrink down the head literally and keep its shape. Like,
It's
it
insane.
was
And
mind-blowing.
They sew the mouth and the eyes shut.
Yeah, I had no idea that a shrunken head was actually like a massive flex on your enemy. You decapitate your enemy, you shrink down their head, and then you wear it. And then you sewed their eyes and mouth shut so they cannot see where they are, that they cannot...
So
what is it? They can't yell for help or something like that.
Yeah,
It was
they can't
basically...
hear, so
It's just one giant flex. Like, who does that? I don't know the names off the top of my head of the tribes that did this stuff, but eventually some white folks discovered that this was a thing and wanted to buy the heads. And what happens? These tribes start going to war to create these heads. So that's
Yeah, that was
history.
Yeah,
Typical
that
history,
is
huh?
history. That is history.
hey, here's some guns and some gunpowder. Go get us some heads, huh?
Some heads. Oh wait, and then there was the black market. It went onto the black market, right?
Right. So apparently there's a whole shrunken head black market.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes.
But I thought it was really cool to see. And they had two of them there. One that was created in like, I guess, a more ritualistic manner.
Yes.
And then another one that was put on the black market to imitate the other.
But still be able to sell it for like the original.
Yeah, obviously. We're
Type
just
of-
basically
yeah.
we're looking at the knockoff versus the authentic
Exactly.
one.
Exactly.
So we just left the Devil's Alley. I forgot to add that they had trees in there that really, like, there's not too many bars that like will do that, and it tied kind of the 2 floors that it occupies really nicely. I would definitely recommend that place. It was nice.
Yeah.
As for the Mutter Museum, also, I would recommend it. Try to be there early, though, I would say, so that you can take your time, not feel rushed, not feel claustrophobic. It is a little steep at $20, in my opinion. You were telling me that it used to be donation only, right?
Yeah, a long time ago. The first time I went to it was early 2000s, and it was a voluntary donation only. And so I was,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was very surprised to see that it was now it's an entrance fee.
Well,
of $20.
how fleshed out was it beforehand? Like, was it as big before? Or was it just like half the size?
I think it was about the same size that it is now. I mean, maybe there's some more additions, and they may have actually taken away a couple things, but for the most part, I mean, there's still more stuff that they put in there that was just as interesting. But it was just a huge hike from, a voluntary donation to flat out $20.
Right. So, all of that being said, definitely would recommend it if you have $20. And I would say give it about 2 to 3 hours to go through the entire thing. Definitely recommend it. And I think we're going to call it here, right?
I agree. Yeah.
All right. So thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brad, for coming along. And I will see you next time. I hope you go make your own adventure. Bye.
Bye.